Welcome to Let's Talk Near Death, the podcast show where we talk about life, death, and experiences somewhere in between. My name is Kirsty Salisbury, the host of the show, and I welcome you to join me as I talk to everyday people with not so everyday experiences. You may also wish to join the conversation on the Let's Talk Near Death Facebook page or access additional VIP content as a premium subscriber via Patreon. For just a couple of dollars a month, you can get an early access to episodes, additional bonus content, and your chance to connect with my guests. To do so, simply visit patreon.com/Kirsty Salisbury. Let's talk near death.
Today I'm joined by Lynn Russell, a near-death expert and author of The Wonder of You, What the Near-Death Experience Teaches You About Yourself. The book is a research of 2,500 near-death experiences, which answers many of the deeper spiritual questions that we've been asking for centuries. Lynn teaches about consciousness, manifestation, and how to achieve a more fulfilling life. So Lynn Russell, welcome to Let's Talk Near Death.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
I'm so excited to connect with you, and I really value the time and the energy that you would have put into writing your book with 2,500 experiences.
Yeah.
What was it that started you on the pathway to start researching and writing about these experiences?
Well, I was terrified of dying. I don't know how many people aren't, but I was just terrified of dying. And this was when I was in my childhood. And so when I got to my teens, I started studying all the religions of the world. And so I was very, very religious, and not religious, that's the wrong word, spiritual. And I got into all kinds of different spirituality that was around, and just learning and growing and experiencing. And then when Moody's book came out, I fell in love with it. That was great. Here it was, the answer. Another part of me is that I was very interested in science. And that began when I was in my mid-30s. And so that's over 45 years ago. And so now, when I retired, I went to neardeathexperience.com. NDERF, which is Near Death Experience Research Foundation. And I was just exploring, and they were looking for researcher, and I put my hand up and said, yes, I'll do that.
Oh, wow.
So that was how I got into the research. But I was so fascinated because when I was doing the research in the beginning, I was interested in what happened to people when they were on the other side. But as I got into it, that was pretty normal after a while, a few hundred. I was, okay, that's fine. And then I started seeing messages hidden underneath all of the experiences. And that was what turned me on. I thought, yes! And so that was what I'd been looking for all my life. And so that's what I wrote my book about, the deeper messages that are behind the experiences.
So when you're talking about these messages that you were seeing, give us an example. What type of things were you seeing? What were these messages?
Well, the kind of things I was seeing was that the information that about we were all one, the oneness, which is common knowledge these days, pretty much. Anybody who's into spirituality knows about the oneness. And so it was, the oneness was one of them. The other part was that what people who entered into the light realized that the light was the source. that was our source, and that was where we came from, and that was where we would return. So that was home, and that was a big message too. And then what happened inside of the light, for example, the creation happening there, and that these people who were in the light became a part of that and experienced creating themselves and being a creator. And so all of these things were just put together, and gradually I just saw more and more and more.
That's amazing, isn't it? It must have been so beautiful to see these experiences, seeing these patterns, I suppose.
Yes.
So with your research, what were some of the bigger things that you learned through your research?
Well, I think the magnificence of our being, that is the top of my list, and the oneness. Those two go together. And almost everything I talk about relates back to the oneness. And our beauty, we are such magnificent beings, and we don't even know it. We don't see it, we don't acknowledge it, because we just think that that's blasphemy to think that we could be that great. But we really are. We're magnificent. And we create. Every single death experience is different because each person takes an active role in creating the experience that they have.
Can you expand on that?
Yeah, well, people don't realize it, that we are great creators. We create so much, and that's what I'm saying. We're way more magnificent than we ever give ourselves credit for being. So we are creators, and we create this existence that we are presently into. And I don't mean individually, I mean as a mass. And we also create our own lives, that's true. But we create the death experience that we experience when we go onto the other side. So the experience that people have are always completely different from one another because we're all individuals.
Yeah.
And so our individuality comes out through the creation. And we're the creators, not something else out there. We are the ones who do that creating. And it's beautiful.
Yeah. And so this creation must be happening on a subconscious level where we're creating our death. Would you say that's right?
People who understand their mindfulness and enlightenment, when a person reaches what they call enlightenment, then they understand that how this all happens. But the average person, no, they wouldn't understand, but the main point that I want to get across isn't so much that, although I do talk about it in the book, and then they can learn and see how it all connects. But the main point I want to get is how magnificent we are, because we really don't see that. We see this all kinds of bad things about ourselves and all the things we've done wrong. But we really are so beautiful.
That is probably quite a hard one, I think, for a lot of people to accept, is just how beautiful we are.
Yeah.
And we hear it all the time that we are, a lot of people would say we're created in the image of God and the likeness of God. And we would never say that God's not beautiful.
Yeah, that's a good point.
But yet for us to experience self-love or to think that we are beautiful.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And the other thing is that God is love. And we've been talking for centuries that God is love. And it really truthfully is. And what element of the God that is love, that's the creative power that is used to create with love. So we are love power.
I love that.
We were created with love. Yeah, and we are love power.
We are love power. That is so great. I love it. Yeah. So your fear of death, did your research change that fear, or do you still have that fear? What happened with that?
Oh, no. Well, my fear's gone. No. Once I really understood what was going on and got to the bottom line, then it just all faded. I mean, why? What was there to be fearful of? It was just, and also, as I said, I had an experience. They're called significant spiritual experience, the transformative. And so I have I had three, and they all fit together. And that taught me about the oneness and about how we were all connected and that we are a part of the source.
Are you happy to share your experiences with us?
Yes, I couldn't do that, sure. It's also in the first chapter of the book. What happened was I was doing dishes at the kitchen sink, and there's a window above the sink, and I'm looking out the window, and there's an apple tree in the backyard, and I'm staring at this apple tree, but I'm not even seeing it. I'm thinking about a dozen other things. All of a sudden, I became the apple tree, and the apple tree became me. There was literally no separation. I was that tree. And then I was the bird in the tree. I was the bugs that the birds were going to eat. I was the grass. I was everything, every kind of life form that I thought of. I became it.
Wow.
And that only lasted a few seconds, really. I mean, I don't even think it was a full minute, but it was so powerful. And so I just was, when I came back, I was standing there by the sink, dripping water all over the place, and just blown away by what had just happened. And I had read about those things in my studies of spirituality. And I just thought it was a cosmic consciousness. And so I said, oh, wow, that's really cool. But I never knew that there was going to be more. Otherwise, I would have written it on the calendar so that I knew what the time in between was. But now days go by and nothing else has happened. And then I had three, by the way, I had three kids, and each one of these experiences, my children were either out or quiet. There was no noise or things going on. Anyway, so I'm washing fingerprints off the hall wall. And all of a sudden, I'm not seeing the wall. I'm seeing an atom with the nuclei and the electrons going around. And then that expanded to our solar system. And so then I saw the sun with the planets going around. And that expanded to the galaxies and how we had the center of the galaxy, which turns out to be a black hole. But anyway, and then the galaxy spinning around. And it just went from the micro to the macro universe. And while I was seeing all of this in my mind, I don't know, because it was almost like I was taken over. I just was seeing this, but I think it was in my mind that I was seeing it. But anyway, while I'm seeing this, I'm getting a message. And the message is that this is not accident. This happened. This was planned and organized. And it took intelligence to create this and put it all together. So that was the first message. The other message came to me, and it was so hard. It hit me in the gut. It was so strong, and I could not deny it, but I didn't like it. And that was that the being was somehow intricately connected with the operation of the universe. And that scared me, because I thought, oh my God, I thought about the responsibility. I thought, oh my God, I can't be responsible for the universe.
Yeah, that's heavy, isn't it?
So I just denied it. I just pushed it away, and then later on I understood this, but at the time it was just all foreign to me. Days go by, and now this time I'm picking up toys in the living room, and I'm standing in the middle of my living room, and all of a sudden there was a presence. There was somebody was there, some entity or some life form that I could not see. But I mean, I couldn't see anything. All I could see was my living room. But the love that was being poured to me, it was like this huge, enormous blanket of love that I couldn't just overwhelming. And then I heard a message, and the message said, "This is where you came from, and this is where you will return."
Oh, wow. Wonderful.
Yeah.
And how did that make you feel? What did you do with that?
Well, I was walking on air. I was so thrilled with what I had learned and this experience, and that this is where I was going to go after I died. It was like, when, I just, that took care of the end of my fear. I just didn't have any fear after that.
You had the fear at that point?
No, after that, it was gone. That was it. Before that, I had it. Before, yes, every night I would just dread, the fact that I was going to die and there was nothing I could do about it. But after that experience, it was like, it's all gone. And the other thing that happened was that at that time, I bit my fingernails right down, really, really. And then when I ran out of fingernail, I would do my cuticles.
Oh, ouch. Yep.
And it was really bad. Well, after that experience, one day I looked down and I had nails.
Oh,
and that was it.
Yep. Is that because out of that fear of dying that is it like an anxiety thing where you're chewing your nails and biting your cuticles?
Well, I don't know. I don't know why I chewed. I was from childhood. I was a nail biter, so I don't know why. Just I probably have it, but maybe I was nervous.
Maybe.
I mean, my childhood wasn't exactly the best, but then a lot of people's aren't. So
yeah,
just like.
Is that where your fear of death came from? Was from your childhood being a little bit difficult?
Yes, yeah. I think my fear was partly that. My mother was an atheist, and so when I asked her what would happen when I died, she just said, "Nothing. You just disappear."
All right.
And that was terrifying. So that's what got me going on studying all these religions when I was in my teens. And I just kept going. I still, if I run across new thoughts, I still want to know about them.
Yeah. Oh, I think it's wonderful. I'm so in awe of you just continuously learning and researching. And I was so excited to get your message about your new book. I just think it's fantastic. Yeah. We should never stop learning.
Yeah, that's right.
So you had these 3 beautiful spiritual experiences. I did happen to pick up that you were cleaning when you had all of them. You were doing the dishes, washing the fingerprints off the wall, and then picking up toys. No correlation there?
Yeah.
No. So you'd had these 3 experiences. What happened then? What made you... I'm assuming that was before you started researching?
Well, no, I didn't understand what it was all about. And I didn't understand what the messages were, deep in behind all of that. I had no idea what it meant. But it was wonderful because it got me going, and it eventually taught me that about the oneness. That was the big message behind that whole thing. So it sent me in that direction. So I think that's probably, how I started to understand more and more about the oneness. And then I got involved with the Course of Miracles, of course. Nice. And then I read a lot of Joel Goldsmith. I'm not sure that a lot of people know his name, but he also teaches the oneness kind of thing. And so all of this was fitting together for me.
What was happening in terms of your family? Were they supportive of what you were doing? Did they understand why you were putting so much time into this type of research?
Not at all. They thought that I was sorry. They thought that I was weird. I was the weird one. I was, you can't, don't worry about Lynn. She's just a little strange.
Oh, that's difficult. And I hear this so often. It's so difficult for people to start sharing their experiences or talking about this topic because until very recently, it has been a little bit left field. It has been a bit unusual, and there's been a lot of perception that we are perhaps a little bit crazy.
Yes.
So I can understand that. But that didn't deter you? You just kept researching, kept doing what you were doing?
Oh, yes. I did. I was obsessed. Well, almost. I mean, like, I just knew that I became frightened of death when I was a little girl because my grandfather died, and I was about 8 or 9, and that's when it all began. When I didn't know him, so I didn't miss him, but I was terrified of this death. And so it just stayed with me. And then that's when I asked my mom, and she told me I disappeared, and that was even worse, because I'm like 8 or 9 and I don't want to disappear. So that was the beginning.
Now, I know you're probably really enjoying this episode, but I wanted to pop in and let you know how you can further support the Let's Talk Near Death podcast. Every little bit of input helps me, it encourages me, and it enables me to be able to bring in more guests, share more episodes, and release more content. If you're financially able, you can pop over and become a VIP subscriber for just a couple of dollars a month. If not, you may want to consider leaving a review on iTunes, sharing an episode with a friend, or connecting over with the Let's Talk Near Death Facebook page. Every little bit of input helps me. Thank you for listening, thank you for your support, and I hope you enjoy the rest of this episode.
So let's go back to your book, The Wonder of You, What the Near-Death Experience Tells You About Yourself. What does the near-death experience tell you about yourself? Is it only what it tells you if you've had the experience, or can we all learn what the experiences can tell us about ourselves?
Oh, yes. All of us can learn. We don't have to have had a near-death experience. And my book is very direct, down-to-earth kind of language. I do have some science in there, but it's stuff that middle grade would be able to understand as a student. It's just very basic kind of information. But yes, it takes you right to the point of seeing why this is why I'm saying the things that I'm saying. Why are you so beautiful? Why are you the magnificent? The book tells you all about that and takes you step by step. I do talk about death experiences as well, not just the heavy stuff, but I also talk about what happens when a person dies and some of the things that people are confused about, like, for example, the difference between an OBE, an NDE, and an astral projection. So I cover those kind of things. I also cover how do I know that death experiences are real, that it isn't just... so I cover those kind of things as well. And step by step what happens to people, what they experience as well.
It's wonderful. I've got to bite my tongue and not ask you all the answers to everything you've just told us, because I know you want us to go and read your book, but I just find this so, so interesting. I'd love to know what else came out. Did you see any similarities or common themes in the near-death experience research you did?
Yeah, there were quite a few things that happened to everyone, and that's because they are spirit. They've left the physical body and now they've entered the spirit world. And there are things that automatically happen when you're at the spirit level. And that was that, number one, what happened was that all communication is through telepathy, that there's no verbal. They also all feel this sense of being one with everything. They anything they think of in the universe, they become it. And they, just like I did with the tree, well, it's the same with the whole universe. They have that same experience. And they also are met by their loved ones, if they have loved ones on the other side. They ask a question and they not only know the answer to that question, but everything that touches onto it. So that by the time they've finished getting their question answered, they know everything. That's all there is. They just know. And there are other things like being able to to travel by thought, because at the spirit level, there's no time or space. All time is now. And so they can instantly be anywhere where they want to be. And the other thing is, and there's one lady that I have in my book that's called Nancy Dennison.
Oh, yes.
And she realized that she was creating these experiences herself. And so what she did was she tested it. And she would think about, well, what would happen if I wanted to be here or I wanted to be... And she would just do it in her mind, and she would instantly be there. And actually, it was as real as this life right now.
That's amazing, isn't it? So out of 2,500 experiences and recollection accounts that you've heard, were there any that really stood out for you?
Yes, there were a few, although to tell you the truth, there were so many that were just so beautiful that I'd forgotten the names of some. Hopefully, I put most of them in the book, but that's one was a woman by the name of D.W., the initials D.W., and she committed suicide, and she knew that she shouldn't do this, but she went ahead and did it, and she was expecting to be punished. And when she got on this other side, she went directly into the light, and she was surrounded by this huge amount of love that everybody feels, by the way. That's another thing that lots of people feel, is this enormous amount of love that's undescribable. Nobody can describe it here. So anyway, she was in the light, and she said, well, what am I doing here? I should be punished. Look what I just did. And she would just get more and more love. So she did see a life review, which we all have to do. That's another thing that most people do, is they have a life review. And there's a great deal of learning in the life review. And so that was one experience. And her description, she's very, very good at describing what she's talking about. So you're right there with it. So that was one. There's another one, a woman named Mira, M-I-R-A, and these are on NDERF website. And Mira was a businesswoman, and she was very successful and made a lot of money, and she had all kinds of things, the big things, money and so on. Anyway, after her experience, she just had a very deep experience. Some people just go over, see their loved ones, and then come back, maybe have a life review, and that's it. But this lady, she had a very deep experience where she learned a great deal about us and about what our reality is and that kind of thing. So that it was so much so that when she came back, she changed her name. Her original name is not Mira, but that's the name she calls herself now. And she's written a book, but I can't tell you the name. But if you go to Mira on NDERF, the book is right there. The title of the book is right there on the top of her page. Anyway, she had a beautiful experience with lots and lots of knowledge and deep kind of understanding. There was one lady another one is Hafur, H-A-F-U-R, and Hafur, and I know that's the name of a city, but she's called herself that. And she also had very deep knowledge, because when she first went over there, she had none of this information, and she came back just absolutely blown away by what she learned. So, and then there's the ones that are miracles, and the miracles they're called, in my book, they're called fear death, F-E-A-R, fear. And the fear-death experiences are death experiences that happen, but it's caused by deep fear. But these people are actually in an accident. They're heading for a tree or for a truck or whatever, and they know this is it. They know they're going to die. They have a quick death experience, and then they come back, and they're in a completely different place. They never hit the truck. They never hit the tree. It just is gone. It's all gone.
Oh, wow. Wow, that is so interesting.
Yeah.
Is that quite a common thing? I've not actually heard about these before. I've heard about when an accident's about to happen or something very traumatic is going to take place, how the spirit can leave the body so that it's not actually experienced, the impact or the key part.
Yes.
But the fear-based experiences, what did you call them? Fear-death experiences?
Yes, fear-death experiences. And they talk about, like, for example, there was one fellow who did hit a tree, but there was this big white light that came into the car with him, and he felt these arms wrapped around him. And throughout the whole accident, he smashes into the tree and ruins the car, steps out without a scratch. And he knew that those arms were his grandma that had died.
Oh, I love these stories. Oh, that really touches me. That's just got me in the heart there.
Yeah.
Wow. You see, the first person that you mentioned, one of the more in-depth ones, you talked about how that was from a suicide.
Yes.
Suicide NDEs and suicide experiences are a very strong interest for me. I'm not quite sure why, but I've always wanted to hear more about that.
Okay.
So in the 2,500 that you've researched, can you share any light on the suicide experiences?
Oh, absolutely. I had quite a few that were suicide. What I can tell you in lump sum is what happens to people who commit suicide. The very first thing on top of the list is that whatever you're trying to avoid, you don't get out of it. You still have to face whatever you're trying to avoid. So what happens is that if the body that has been left behind is still functioning or can still hold life, you're usually sent right back. If you don't want to go back, you refuse to go back, then you have two options, or the body's just not going to support any life. You've dropped off, if they've jumped off a bridge or something,
Yeah.
So if the body can't be continued to be used, then there's two options. One is that they can stay there and they can relive and relive and relive over and over again the experience that brought them to suicide. And what they have to do is they have to think of a way that they could have handled it without suicide.
Oh, right, yeah.
The other choice is that they can come back to a new life, reincarnate, but they again have to have a life that is exactly the same as the one they left, that they still have to deal with the same situations.
Yeah, I've heard that a few times actually, that you can't escape it. You need to come back and relive it, because that's the purpose of being here, is for the lesson or something similar to that line.
Yeah.
Negative experiences. Did you come across many?
Oh, yes. I think in the hundreds I did, or thousands that I did, I came across everything. Yes, there were quite a few people who had hellish kind of or negative experiences. And so when they would be there, they would, they were in great pain and terrible experience. But as soon as they asked to be taken out, they immediately were removed, instantly. So all they had to do was to say, "Get me out of here." Sometimes there was one man who thought he had to talk about God or something, but he didn't know what he was going to say, and he didn't believe in God, and he was just stumbling over this whole thing. And then all of a sudden he remembered, "Jesus loves me." Yes, I know the song. And so he started to sing that, and bang, he was out. And so every single time a person is there and they ask to be taken out of that situation, they are right away. The second point is that then when they're out, they say, "What was that all about?" What about hell and so on. And they are told that they have created that for themselves. That's an experience that they created for themselves.
So how would they have created that for themselves?
Well, because as I said before, we are creators, and we create way more than we realize that we're creating. And in this world, we can see it through our choices. We can, the choices that we make and accept, and the things that we accept. That's one of the ways that we can see, but it is through choices that we primarily. So we create a lot, and we don't realize that it's through our choices. We think life happens to us, but we really have a great deal of control. Not 100%.
Yeah, I completely agree with this, because I believe very much that we can design our lives, we can design our future, and all it is an accumulation of our current moments that are setting the stage, I suppose, for the future moments. Yeah. However, I was not aware until talking to you now that we could create our own death, or that subconsciously we were creating for these people a negative experience rather than a positive one.
Yeah.
Very, very interesting.
Yeah. Well, that's one of the first things that I expect, that I talk about when I get into the book, is that how we create, not how, that comes out later, but the fact that we create our own experience, and how no two death experiences are the same. They can go through a tunnel, but every tunnel is completely different from each other.
Absolutely. They're very, very unique. I know from my own near-death experience, I had my father in that, and he was alive at the time, a living person. I hear that's quite uncommon. Is that something you came across?
Oh, is that interesting? Oh, no, that it does happen, but and you're probably the second one that I can remember that has seen a live person in their death experience. Most people, when they see someone that they think is still alive on the world, that person is passed too.
Yes, I've heard that. It was interesting because I never saw him. He was always behind me and slightly to the right of me. It was more of a communication, and he was talking to me and guiding me, but I never physically saw him. And my near-death experience was a very, very confusing thing. And I always thought that I'd never had the experience because I had my father there, and I thought, well, you can't have a living person in an experience. So I didn't.
Right. Yes. Yeah.
So again, I'm asking, I've got a bit of a selfish motive there to see, whether that is something that's come out. I do know of a couple of people who have had the experiences with living people in them. But it's definitely not a common thing, which is what I've learned.
No. Usually when they see someone that they think is alive, the person isn't. But it's not common to see someone who's still alive during a death experience, unless you're looking down on them, when you're up there and you're looking down at them and on their, what they're doing. And that's something that your audience might be interested in learning, is that they can hear us. The people who have passed on the other side can hear us. They know our thoughts. They know how we feel about things. And any issue that you had while you were here while that person was here on earth is gone. It's all gone. It's finished. They love you more than you can ever know.
Yeah.
Even somebody who you thought hated you loves you so much right now.
It's so reassuring to know that, isn't it? Because often we think we missed our chance, and we live with regret around what could have been, or a conversation that didn't happen. And I've seen this so many times. So it's so good to know that it's all gone and there is no remaining conflict, I guess. Yeah. What about spiritual perspectives? Are there any themes in terms of beliefs or people coming back and being converted to a specific belief system or a religion or anything in that way?
People, one of the things that happens is that, it's common for people to see a deity, that is part of their religion, like, Buddha or Jesus or Moses or whatever. That's common. But they also, the deity, by the way, takes on the same role as the spirit guide does. But when they come back, often people have said, that's not what I learned during my church. So many people leave the church, any church, and become spiritual, like a broad kind of spirituality, and they very often become Buddhist.
Isn't that interesting?
Not necessarily that one, but there are quite a few that will become Buddhist.
Okay, and is that because of the belief system with Buddhism?
Well, I think it's because when you go deep into Buddhism, that takes you to that enlightenment stuff that I'm talking about. And the enlightenment, people who are enlightened are in touch with their spiritual reality.
Gosh, I have learned so much from you, Lynn. Thank you so much for sharing your time with us, but also for writing this book. So where can we get hold of this book? Is this book available on Amazon?
Yeah, it's on Amazon. It's on Barnes & Noble, and any online book sales places will have it.
Wonderful.
What I'm interested in is to get my message to people so they understand how magnificent they are. I'm on Facebook, and so I'm also on LinkedIn and Twitter.
We will put the links so people can connect with you and they can follow you and find out more about what you're doing.
Okay.
I'm so excited to see what you are doing because I'm so impressed by the tenacity that you have and the way that you're embracing life. And you could be sitting down and just having a nice cup of tea right now, but you're not. And that excites me so much. Lynn Russell, thank you so much for coming on and sharing. I can't wait to promote your book. I hope to get it out there. I hope that these messages and the understanding from your years of research that you've collated for us is going to help so many people to release their fear of death, to understand why we need to live full lives, and also what this is all about.
Thank you. That's so important. And thank you for having me. I've really enjoyed chatting with you.
Thanks for joining me on this episode of the Let's Talk Near Death podcast show. If you've enjoyed it, please share it with your friends, tell people about it. I'd love to get these messages out there. Don't forget you can also pick up your VIP access pass for additional content at patreon.com/Kirsty Salisbury. You can connect with us via the Let's Talk Near Death Facebook page, and I look forward to catching you for another episode soon.